Inequality in the United States and the divide between the richest 1% and the rest of the country. Bloomberg News reported Tuesday that pay for the top CEOs on Wall Street increased by over 20% last year. The article is based on analysis of data reported to the Securities and Exchange Commission and finds that the substantial rise comes after a 26% jump in CEO salaries in 2010. Meanwhile, census data shows nearly 1 in 2 Americans, or 150 million people, have fallen into poverty or could be classified as low income. 38% of African American children and 35% of Latino children live in poverty.
Well, our next guest has helped to popularize the expression the 1% and brought to light the causes behind increasing inequality in the United States. Joseph Stiglitz is a Nobel Prize-winning economist. During the Clinton administration from 93 to 97, he served on the Council of Economic Advisors. His May 2011 Vanity Fair article, Of the 1% by the 1% for the 1%, serves as the basis of his new book, The Price of Inequality, How Today's Divided Society Endangers Our Future. Joseph Stiglitz teaches at Columbia University. We welcome you back to Democracy Now! I mean, this figure you have on page 8 of your book, when you say, consider the Walton family. The 6 heirs to the Walmart empire command wealth of $69.7 billion, which is equivalent to the wealth of the entire bottom 30% of U.S. society.
It's a comment both on how well off the top are and how poor the bottom are. And it's really emblematic of the divide that has gotten much worse in our society. One of the points I try to make in the book is none of this is inevitable. It's not just market forces. The United States is the country in the world with the highest level of inequality, and it's getting worse.
The highest level?
Of the advanced industrial countries.
The highest level
of the advanced industrial countries. And to me, what's even more disturbing is we've become the country with the least equality of opportunity of all the advanced industrial countries for which there's data. You know, we think of ourselves as a land of opportunity, American dream, and they're all examples that we know of where people have made it, you know, immigrants, other people have made it to the top. But what matters really are the numbers, the chances. You know, what are your life chances? If you have the misfortune of being born to a poor family or somebody whose parents are not well educated, what are your chances of going from the bottom to the middle or the bottom to the top? And they are lower in the United States than in other advanced industrial countries.
I mean, it's a striking fact, because you talk about it a few times in your book, that now in old Europe, there's more class mobility than there is in the U.S. And, of course, we always think of Europe as being very class rigid.
That's right. And this is a change in many respects. And one of the other points I try to emphasize in the book is it has consequences. It has consequences for our sense of identity, of what we are, but it also has even more, you know, you might say narrow economic consequences, because what it means is that if you have them, you know, make the mistake of choosing the wrong parents, the likelihood is that you're not going to live up to your potential. And we are, in that sense, wasting our most important assets, our human resources.
You also say that ultimately the rich will also pay an extraordinary price for this inequality. How?
Well, we're all in the same boat together. You know, there are a lot of people who are very bright, who work very hard in developing countries, emerging markets, who have very low incomes. The point is that all of us benefit from our education system, our legal system, the way our whole society functions. In those parts of the world where there's a large divide, mainly in, you know, emerging markets, developing countries, where there's a large divide, societies fall apart. There's political, social, economic turmoil. And in that context, not even the 1% can do that well.
I wanted to ask you about the people we value and the people we don't. You have an amazing set of examples. You say few are inventors. You say by looking at those at the top of the wealth distribution, we can get a feel of the nature of this aspect of America's inequality. Few are inventors who have reshaped technology or scientists who have reshaped our understandings of the laws of nature. Think of Alan Turing, whose genius provided the mathematics underlying modern computer, or of Einstein, or of the discoverers of the laser, in which Charles Towns played a central role, or John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, and William Shockley, the inventors of transistors, or of Watson and Crick, who unraveled the mysteries of DNA upon which rests so much of modern science, none of them who made such large contributions to our well-being are among those most rewarded by our economic system. We have very different names that are tied to these so-called inventions, like of the Internet.
That's right. And the point is that the theory that was developed in the 19th century to justify the inequality that was emerging with capitalism was marginal productivity theory. It was the notion that those who contributed most to society would get bigger rewards. It was a sense, you might say, of moral justification, but also an argument for economic efficiency. And what we now realize is the individuals who've made the most important contributions are not those that are at the top. The people, many of the people at the top, for instance, are those financiers who brought the world to the brink of ruin. And the moment of the Great Recession, I think, was a really telling moment in our rethinking of what was going on. You know, we all sort of understood that there was something wrong. But in that crisis where you saw so many bankers who had brought the world to the brink of ruin, who actually brought their companies to the brink of ruin, walk off with pay in the millions of dollars, it was very clear there was a disconnect between private rewards and social returns, really undermining the theory that was the basis of the justification of inequality in our society.
So when did financiers, though, come to have this kind of power?
Well, it's been an evolution. But I think, in my mind, a really telling change was the repeal of Glass-Steagall, where, you know, we told the banks, you know, don't focus on what you're supposed to be doing, which is providing credit to new businesses, to expand businesses. We brought together the commercial banks, which were the basis of, you know, the kind of prudent lending, and investment banks who took rich people's money and gambled. And we put it together. We created these financial institutions that were too big to fail. And the result of that was they grew larger and larger, and the risk-taking, gambling, speculation, dominated rather than the lending, which is the basis of a growing, productive economy. But in a way, the evolution for our economy more generally began about 1980. That's, if I would say, where's their dividing point, where the CEOs began to realize that they could take a larger and larger share of the corporate income. They understood that we have deficient corporate governance laws, and so we didn't require a say in pay. We didn't require, you know, shareholders are supposed to own the firms, but the shareholders had no say in the pay of the companies, of the managers of the companies that they were supposed to own. A very strange situation. I mean, if you had somebody working for you, you would say you ought to have some say in their pay. And the result of that is they took a larger and larger share. And if you look at those at the top, as I say, they're not the Watson and Cricks, the people who made these big changes. They're corporate CEOs.
Who was Berners-Lee?
Well, these are people who, you know, made the Internet, the people who...
But we think Mark Zuckerberg, we think Gates, we think Jobs.
You know, all of these played an important role. You know, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that. But all of these rest on a foundation. And that foundation was largely publicly provided, publicly funded. You couldn't have a program if you didn't have a computer. And you don't have a computer unless you do the mathematical research that is provided the foundation. That was the Turing. That was Alan Turing. You don't have Internet programs unless you have the Internet. And that was something that the U.S. government helped to develop. And these other people that helped develop the World Wide Web. So, you know, the irony is that the people who provided the foundation on which our entire modern economy is based are not the people who've done well.